But in order to kick things off, I'm going to turn things over to Fred Homan, Senior Analyst with Mayor and Mayor. Fred, take it away.
Thanks, Brian, and welcome, everyone. Glad to have you here. I think we're all queued up to have a discussion or a chat. I hope you have your virtual cup of coffee or actual coffee or tea in hand and are ready with some questions for our presenters. We'll move fairly quickly through the introductions, but if you are online and haven't signed in, please do. I see we have several of the states, almost all the states online, and that's great. We also have our three presenters, and we'll take just a minute to introduce them. I think if you've been on the webinars with us to kick off or any of the webinars since the kickoff on Monday, you will know all three of these professionals. Then as soon as we do that, we'll move right into a series of questions and answers, and I'll ask a question to get things going and give the panelists a chance to respond to that, kind of to get our juices flowing. And then after they've had a chance to respond, we'll start taking questions right away. At any time while they're talking or at any time during the session, please go ahead and type in a question in the chat window that you see and that you've already used as you signed in. Okay, we're good to go here up to 45 minutes. We have another chat coming this afternoon, so that'll be the limit of our time. And with that, I'm going to move right into introducing our panel. Joanna Palladino is the UIES Social Media Project Manager at the New York State Department of Labor and has over 15 years of experience developing, implementing, and supporting various workforce programs statewide. From the grand state of Minnesota, Mike Ellsworth is joining us. He's the Program Director for Career One Stop, Department of Employment and Economic Development for the state of Minnesota, and responsible for social media implementation there. And our third panelist, Darlene Kanopoulos, is a social media coordinator for Idaho Department of Labor. And before joining the Department of Labor in 2012, she worked for nearly 20 years with a Statesman newspaper in Boise. And from the look of your photo, Darlene, you must have been a cub reporter, a child reporter. This was very good.
So yeah, we're going to stick with that.
With that, I want to thank our panelists again for participating and being here for all of us. I know we're going to hear some great stuff as we go forward. And go forward we will. I'm going to ask the panelists to begin by each of you, and you can start as your pictures were lined up there, Joanna, Mike, and Darlene in that order if you want. And take a shot at answering, what are the top three things states need to know on training for social media?
I think the three things that we really looked at initially, one was, how are we currently connecting with our customer base? And when we say customer base, we mean our job-seeking customers as well as our business customer. You want to know, how are they connecting with you right now? What is your web analytics showing? What customers are connecting with you? Are you missing a substantial customer base somewhere where your existing communication strategy, whether it's your tone or whether it's your tools, are you missing somebody that's significant or a group of people that are significant? So that's one thing. The other one we wanted to look at was, do you actually know what is going on at your local, career centers or reemployment centers or one-stop career centers, whatever you may call them in your existing states? And when I say do you know the current skill level of your frontline staff who are responsible for reemployment efforts, not only what it is that they do know, but how comfortable and confident are they with training customers on social media and social media for reemployment. The other thing you definitely want to know is, what are folks already currently doing at different career centers across the state? So if you're as large as we are, trying to get a handle on what may already be offered in certain areas or what people may already know is definitely something that you want to know so that you can leverage that expertise or knowledge base as you move forward for training. And then you also want to know, what do your customers currently know? Where are their skills right now, their familiarity, their knowledge, and their comfort level with using social media for reemployment, and what services, programs, or offerings do you need to create to be able to help fill the gap between what they know and what they need to know? So those are sort of the big three to start out with. Who are you currently connecting with? What is the skill level of your frontline staff who are responsible for reemployment? And, what is the skill level of your job-seeking and business customers when it comes to social media and using that for either the job search, whether it's, finding employers, or if you're on the business end, using it for social recruitment.
Terrific. Thanks, Joanna. This is a great start. Lots of great things to think about. And with that, I'm going to ask Mike if he'd like to take a shot at the same question. What three things?
Sure. Well, Joanna highlights probably the most important things one has to consider. A few things additional to that, especially around staff. We find here in Minnesota, I imagine it'll be the same in your state, is there's a lot of staff who have attitudes towards social media, positive and negative, but also have attitudes about the use of online techniques in general. We have a lot of folks in Minnesota who have a hard time accepting solutions that aren't applicable to 100% of their populations. And a lot of the folks who come in are folks who really do need personal, one-on-one, in-person type of help. And so I think framing the whole discussion around social media to say this is for people who have the capacity to do this is kind of important because you do need to hear those people who say, hey, lots of the folks I see aren't using, can't use, don't have, that sort of thing. The second attitude that you might see out there in the people who will be delivering, customer contact is that their population doesn't have access to the internet. And a lot of them forget that many folks have phones and get them on the internet. What we saw, we did a statewide survey surveying partners out in the workforce centers, and they figured that the population that we were specifically interested in, 40 to 55, did not have access to the internet and didn't have smartphones. Then we surveyed that population and found that they thought they could get access to the internet anytime they wanted. And it was either by going to a library or going on their smartphone or having it at home. And actually the penetration at home was surprising to us. So I guess that's the third thing, which is you may have some preconceptions about your populations, and the real way to get the actual facts is to actually ask them. We surveyed REA participants, for example, and we surveyed the whole age range, but also we were mostly concentrating on 40 to 55. And our preconception going in was that was going to be a hard population to reach via social media. But 53 or 57% of them didn't think like they needed any social media training at all to search for a job. So it was quite surprising for us. It changed the way that we offered our training. We offered much more advanced training than we were originally planning. And so that's what I think you'll want to do as well, is to really make sure that you get the facts on the ground before you start planning your training.
Very good. Excellent. Thank you, Mike. We are getting some questions in, but before we start turning to questions from the field, I'd like to go ahead and ask you, Darlene, to add anything you'd like to what Mike and Joanna have said.
Yeah, so both of them raised really good points. I'd just like to add just kind of the caveat, we haven't done our major training yet. We've had to delay it for a variety of reasons here. But we know what we're planning to do which is focusing on the mission of the department and not just trying to do some basic, how to use Facebook or how to use LinkedIn training, but to go beyond that for networking and how to use a job for social media, that type of thing. So by using the research like they talked about, we've figured out what our focus will be. Training needs to be ongoing. You can't do it once and then assume that you'll get everyone, but also that people will remember it. It needs to be reinforced. And then the key for us is not just training per se, but communication. We've had some people on the staff who, in the local offices, who don't understand why they can't create a competing job name Twitter account or whatever. And, it's making sure that people understand our policy and why we have a central message and, why we don't want someone to create a Boise job Twitter account necessarily. And so making sure that we're communicating back to the staff about what our mission is as a department and what we're trying to work with job seekers and businesses about. And so that is really important, making sure that people feel like they're all in the loop and they're all aware of what the department is doing.
Okay. Good. And thank you all three. Thank you, Darlene, for that. I would now ask anybody from the field, if you've got questions, please go ahead and, having heard what responses to this opening question, please pop in your questions in the box that Brian's put up for the audience. So, not seeing any yet, I think I'll go ahead and ask a couple of follow-on questions. For any of you panelists, can you talk about any particularly effective approaches to training various target groups? That is, I think you must clearly, you'll all talk about training staff, but you're also, you've got customers that need some help getting up to speed on social media, both the job seeker and the employer. Are there effective approaches to any one of these groups that, or differences that you'd like to point out for the audience listening?
Well, this is Joanna. One of the things that we noticed initially when we did survey a lot of our career centers, and I'd say some of them were already providing social media training, when we took a look at some of their curriculum and looked at some of the evaluations, what we noticed was that our staff was so eager to provide training that they would do these 3 to 5 hour social media sessions, and I felt, and the customers felt, that it was extremely overwhelming. It was just too much information. So what they realized is that they couldn't do just one social media workshop, and that wasn't sufficient. So they really had to create levels of social media training, ranging from even a basic introduction to, really advanced based on the topic, the tool, and where people were at with the skills with social media usage. So there's not a one-size-fits-all strategy at all. And what they, really found was getting that feedback from the customer really told them, what they needed. And then some groups have found, depending on the career center, that they may do, a homogenous type group, folks over 50, folks over 70 sometimes, other times, veteran-specific social media training. It just really depended on the career center and what the needs were of the customers at that respective career center. But what a lot of the folks did find was that before they could even get them to some of the social media training, just even basic computer skills training was needed, especially for some of our LEP and immigrant population base.
Very good. Thank you. So, not only looking at what the audience wants, but what they can, what they can absorb at any one point in time, and how you can best reach them by maybe breaking things into smaller bites or modules.
Yeah, and this is Mike, specifically regarding with the employers. The feeling that we had when we talked to intermediaries was that employers were very much, the smaller ones, mostly small and medium-sized, were behind the curve in terms of usage of internet and usage of social media. And what we're finding is that is in part true. It's not generally true. But what we did find, however, was that getting the economic developers involved really brought a lot of the employers to the table. When we launched our kind of pilot in the Brainerd region, we had 35 employers show up, and a lot of those got the word through the the Economic Development Commission that operated in that region. So if you're thinking of reaching out to employers to get them to try to help with the social media effort, think about that as a possibility as well.
Very good. I'd like to follow on with that, Mike. After the social media webinar on Tuesday, you shared titles on a number of courses and modules, more than 20, it seemed to me, that Minnesota had put together. And they were grouped around various tools and so forth, like 5 modules on Facebook and 8 for advanced Facebook and so forth. Can you talk a little bit about how these were developed and how they're delivered?
Sure. We partnered with our communications division to develop the training, and we had an advantage because they had already been doing some training because it had been asked for from the field. And they had put together a series of, I think, 3 or 4 1.5-hour sessions. So we worked with them, and then we also reached out to our WIBs and to people there who were into training, and actually 2 of the modules are almost completely written by a lady up in St. Cloud. So that was good because it brought in the expertise from the field and also the enthusiasm and all the rest. The training was delivered in June in a series of 2 webinars over 2 days, and they were train-the-trainer webinars. We don't pretend to think that we can know the populations at the individual workforce centers out there as well as the people there. And we had, I don't remember how many, it was quite a few, 60 or 80 people attend at least some of those trainings. Then we recorded them and made them available. I believe we put them on YouTube. And provided those materials. We also provided handout materials and brochure-like materials, etc. And then kind of said, go forth and do this training. And now we're also working with our central office training folks to try to add this into their curriculum as well and make it a standard offering.
Very good. Thank you, Mike. We are getting several questions now from states who are signed on. And I'll start off with the first one that came in. How do you identify good candidates among staff to manage and utilize social media? Do you have some tools or assessments for staff, or how else?
We relied a lot on our supervisors and managers to identify the key staff. Those folks are the folks who had technology interest or had maybe some background in social media already. And so a lot of the managers and supervisors at the local career centers did already know who those folks were who may have an interest. And so they were the ones who identified, their staff. And then they referred their staff to us centrally to be part of the community of practice and to also sort of train the trainer of their colleagues at the other career centers. So we really relied on the supervisors and managers after we marketed the grant and talked about where we wanted to go and where we were headed, and really kind of did a big marketing push to managers and supervisors so that they understood the benefits of, being social media savvy in the agency and also just in, the workforce system in general.
We did basically the same thing. We relied on the area managers and local office managers. We also wanted to make sure that we had representatives from across the state, so we filled in gaps where we saw them. And not everyone on the staff or on our team is a social media expert right now, but they were all people who were willing to learn and excited about the prospect, so that was helpful too.
Yeah, the only thing that I would add to this, and I know Joanna has a community of practice as well, is we use our outreach around getting people into the community of practice to also identify people that could do the training.
Okay. Very good. I hope that answers the question. If not, whoever entered the question, we'll give you a chance at the end to come back. We'll open up the lines or give you a chance to open your line. Thank you all for responding to that. I have a question from the implementing states. Are there consequences if those staff abuse social media, such as posting something that is inappropriate? Do your legal team assist in drafting language around this topic?
Well, in New York State, we have a computer usage policy for all state employees. And so it was the determination of our counsel's office and the determination of our agency executive staff that any usage on social media, in their minds, was covered by the computer usage policy from our Office of Information Technology. So there are repercussions based on the computer usage policy that was vetted through our unions as well. And so whatever those repercussions are, would be used in those instances. I have to tell you that it's very rare that we see this. And I think the fear of how staff will A, abuse it, or B, do something wrong isn't nearly as much as the incidents in which you see it occurring.
Yeah, and I would second that. We already had a policy for inappropriate speech or representation and that sort of thing. We just basically leveraged that, and I would also second the idea that I don't think we've had a single problem, at least not identified.
Very good. Anything to add, Darlene?
No, we're basically the same. We have a computer use policy and also a separate social media policy that we have updated a bit to make it clear what expectations are and that type of thing.
Thank you. And so, any of you, do you feel that any of the policy is a hindrance to people joining in using social media? Is it an obstacle to moving forward?
No, I mean, I think, to be honest with you, our policy was left broad on purpose to make sure that people, did have the freedom to be able to use social media as long as it wasn't, as the official spokesperson for the New York State Department of Labor. And I haven't seen, any hindrances. I mean, if anything, it's not our policy that's ever been a problem. It's usually our information security officer. So there's a lot of things we're not allowed to use that we would love to use that just can't seem to pass through the ISO's office. So.
Yeah. So there are boundaries and limitations, but that's understandable in government.
Right, but it's not part of the social media policy. It's part of the ISO's technology process.
Right. Okay, we have another good question, I think. Can you speak to the hands-off of outreach conducted or inbound questions that come in via social media from customers to the actual service delivery solution? I think I would interpret that as, are there things that are out of bounds that you see on social media?
Darlene, do you want to take a crack at this, because you're one of the few people that does the direct answering of customer comments on your social media site.
Yeah, I'm not sure I quite understand the question, the hands-off of outreach. We have only had if you mean from customers, we have had a few cases where people have posted on our Facebook page things that are a little bit inappropriate. We have a Facebook comment policy that we have posted under, one of the little about tabs, and we've deleted the comment and reminded them of, what our policy is. We do try to answer the questions that come in. We vet them to make sure that we're saying the correct answer. So, for instance, with WIA, we had a woman very unhappy when I first started, actually, and posted this long post on Facebook about our services, and we were very careful about what we wrote back. We talked to the people who were involved in that situation first. So we want to make sure that it's interactive and that people feel like they're getting their questions answered, but we also don't answer personal questions. So if they have a question about their claim or whatever, we tell them we need to take it offline, that type of thing. I'm not sure if that answers the question, but...
Right. If the individual or state that put the question up did not get a response, the response or the answer to the question, please let us know that. Type in another clarifying note, or at the end you can come back and ask again.
And maybe just Sarah Scudder here is trying to help me clarify that. if it's a handoff, we do go back to the experts in each of the areas. So if it's UI or WIA or whatever, I don't try to answer those without their input. Sometimes I, pretty them up a little bit with my journalism background and shorten the answer or whatever, but I don't claim to be the expert of every resource we have here, and I want to make sure that we're as accurate as possible. So I just make sure that I'm going to the experts in the department to make sure we can get people as clear answers as we can.
And that's what our communications office does in New York as well. They'll let the customer know that they saw their question and they're going to get right back to them. And then we usually get emails forwarded from our communications department just to vet the response to make sure that it's accurate.
And does the program office then send out the response, or does it come back through communications?
It goes back through communications. So then communications is the one who responds on Facebook. At this point, though, because we've have it going for so long, they almost have a number of questions that a lot of the questions are the same or very similar. So at this point, they almost have canned responses that they can respond to that are pretty similar once they vetted a certain question and a response. And then if they're not 100% sure, they'll ask the customer maybe to direct message, a phone number or an email address where they can then contact them directly.
Right, and we do the same. And if it's a question that we think is coming up frequently, we add it to the blog. We have an FAQ section so that we can refer people back to that same answer as well.
Very good. I think, again, I think that's right spot on, but if it's not from the state that asked the question, please do let us know. Thank you, panelists. That was very, very helpful. We have a question, too, about labor relations issues. Are there any in your states where unionized workforce agency staff have had problems with social media implementation?
Well, in Minnesota, we have unionized staff, and I have not heard of any problems at all.
Same in New York.
Okay. Very good. So that was short and sweet. We're not supposed to ask yes or no answer questions, so I'll have to shape these a little differently. No, thank you. That was I don't think it needs elaboration, but again, if the state has further questions, we can come back later. All right. Do you know? Here's another question. Do you know which platform is best for engaging with which kinds of customers? Do you target employers on Facebook or Twitter, and are job seekers best reached through LinkedIn or Facebook? Can you speak a little bit about targeting customer groups with the various platforms?
Darlene, do you want to start off with this one?
Sure. I think it's going to be, honestly, a little bit state by state, which is why we did our research first. So, while it's not the be-all, end-all research, we had a good idea of where our customers already were, both business and job seekers. That being said, Facebook and LinkedIn are good places to start because that's a place where you're going to find both businesses and job seekers. And so we use those probably more heavily than the others. Twitter is used in our state more in the populated areas, obviously, than the rural areas. So we're targeting the messages differently depending on what audience we're trying to reach. But I think every state's going to be a little bit different. And then you also have to weigh your staff time because all of these can be a time suck, and so it's a matter of how many platforms you choose to take on.
In New York, we did an analysis of our analytics to see, who is coming on, what the average user looks like. And so we found that our YouTube channel was probably one of the best ways for us to connect with males, over the age of 24 to probably 35. So we know that they seem to like that more than any of our other tools that we have available to them. Facebook is pretty much all across age demographics, and initially our communications office was using Twitter primarily to connect with media outlets, and so it was kind of the forgotten tool. After this grant launched, we encouraged them to take a look at who was following them, and then they realized that they needed to expand the usage of Twitter because of the folks who were using it. So every tool may have a different age range / demographic / gender. And then we also took a look at our survey results from our customers in our career centers as well as online to see what tools they preferred, what they were using most often. The big three usually show up. So again, you have, LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter tends to be the big three, and then what we've seen is a huge spike in Pinterest. So those are usually the four that we focus primarily on.
Yeah, and in Minnesota, pretty much the same thing. You're going to want to do the research. Part of that can be done via a survey, and part of it is just trying various messages in various of the channels. One of the things that surprised us quite a lot in our survey of potential users was a whole lot of them were telling us that they were using Google+, and that wasn't jiving with what we felt were the three most important. But Google+ was coming up there, so we had done a pilot survey, and Google+ came up like second or third. We're going, well, that's kind of strange. So we thought, well, perhaps they're thinking Google. I use Google every day, so that's what I'm going to say. So we clarified the language and said, no, we're talking about Google+, and it still came back the same. So that meant we really needed to start to think about whether they just weren't reading, or were still making a mistake and not distinguishing between Google and Google+, or whether we really needed to be on Google+. And we haven't solved that one yet. We're still working on trying to figure that out. But you will know where the places are to engage people by how engaged they are when you're there.
Mm-hmm. So, I think I hear all of you saying you test the waters and see how it works, and if nobody's there, then that's not your answer, right?
Right. And listen, a lot of these tools come with great analytics that you can take a look at and analyze, or you can use Google Analytics, or you can buy, social media analytics tool if you want as well, and it'll tell you, what time are they coming on, where are they coming from, are they coming mobile, are they coming on a PC, are they visiting you from a certain part of the state, from certain cities, what post do they find most fascinating and interesting. So a lot of that information is there for you.
Very good. Thank you. I think a lot of good information, particularly in response to that question. Thanks again. I have one final question here. Did any of your states need to make legislative changes to implement social media? Example, we have a very strict policy, privacy language in our state law. If we took a photo at a job fair and posted it to Facebook and it contained pictures of job seekers and employers, we might be in violation of state law. Did any of you three run into that sort of, or any other kind of legislative obstacle when you were implementing?
I live tweeted at a couple of our job fairs and took pictures of the job seekers and the businesses. I asked each one if I could do that and how I was going to be using that, and then I had them sign a photo release. So I didn't encounter any difficulties. I definitely talked to your counsel's office and see if they sign a photo release, would that absolve you of any of the legal issues that you may have. I don't think, my state privacy law is pretty strict, but with that photo release, they're basically saying, yes, you can use my image. So that's how I got around that issue through the photo release policy that we have.
Yeah, great. But no other issues that came up in your state legislation that you had to address before you could go forward?
Not that I'm aware of. Not that our counsel's office has told me about either.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm not aware of any issues that we've had yet in Minnesota, but it's actually a really good question to make sure that everybody considers.
Right.
We haven't had any issues here in Idaho. We also have people sign photo releases when we're at job fairs and that type of thing.
Okay. I have one more question of my own. Is Joanna, you talked the other day about New York moving to social media for mobile applications and developing some mobile applications. Have you thought, will there be specific training challenges as you go forward with this, do you think? Or have you even begun to think about that?
Yeah, we did. We actually our work group met, and then what we did was we looked at all of the resources we have in regards to reemployment and just services that we provide, and we did kind of a wish list. So we started out dreaming first, and we prioritized 10 different sort of web-based features or applications that we currently offer that we wanted to be able to move to mobile. And then we met with our user experience team through our IT department and asked them, what was the lowest hanging fruit? What do they think they could accomplish quick, that they could learn from the process so that we can then apply to some of the more complicated and difficult applications that we had. So the first thing we actually did was we overhauled our Career Center locator that was on our website. That was a basic Google Career Center locator map, but it wasn't mobile responsive or mobile friendly. And so we sort of met and discussed whether we wanted to go toward mobile apps where you would download from the App Store, or if we were more interested in mobile responsive design. And we decided for our users, if we could cut a step out of having to have them download something, it probably would be better for our customer base. And so we moved to mobile responsive design, and the locator is one of the easiest things to convert to mobile responsive design. So we actually have it finished and completed. We're just we're actually waiting for the press release to go out, and that's really what's holding it up right now. It's been done since August 1st, and so hopefully once they want to quote-unquote launch it, it'll be ready to go. And then from there, we'll move into the next pieces that we're interested in. The biggest challenge is a lot of our great reemployment services that are web-based were provided or made by another vendor. And so we have to work with them to then create the mobile responsive design. So what we've asked our IT department to do is when we're doing an additional scope of work for any upgrades that we have with any of our web products, that they integrate making sure that any design moving forward has HTML5 in it and can be mobile responsive moving forward. So that's something to think about. If you're looking at your website or any of your web-based services or products, are they built right now to make it mobile responsive? And if they're not, are any of your contracts or the language that you have moving forward making sure that if anything is developed in the future that it's part of mobile responsive design, and it should make things a lot easier on you.
Thanks, Joanna. Yeah, it's exciting to think about the services being out there where people are. It's cool. Well, we are taking a check of the time here, just logistical peak. We're approaching the end of the time we have allotted, so I'd like to suggest, Brian, that we open the phone lines or ask people to open, using *6, and come in with any questions that they have at this point.
All right, great. So we'll start by asking you to open your own phone line if you'd like to ask a question or make a comment verbally. So the way to do that is to press *6 on your phone. So go ahead and press *6 now if you'd like to chime in with a question or comment before we close out the session. And again, just press *6 on your phone if you'd like to ask a question or make a comment. Also, just want to remind you to stay with us. We'll be asking a couple of feedback questions, so please stay with us even if you don't have a question that you'd like to ask. Otherwise, you can just press *6 to chime in now.
Okay. Well, if you please continue to do that before we finish, if a question comes to mind. But to keep things rolling, I'll say thank you again very much to our presenter, our excellent subject matter experts, and we so appreciate your willingness to share and your skills at doing so. Great. I wanted to ask Jen with ETA, Jen Purtle, if you have anything you'd like to say before we sign off and close the chat.
No, but I just want to thank everyone for coming. We have all the states represented today, so we hope you're all with your teams, and know that this is the format for the chat, so you can bring your questions and just throw them at the subject matter experts in our pilot states. And as you can see, they are happy to answer and have great answers for your questions. So keep the questions coming, even if you forget them now, you can email them to us later and we can get back to you.
If you're coming, this is Joanne, I'm sorry, just really quick. If you're coming up with your training plan to be able to make sure that your frontline staff know how to do social media for the job search, you may want to look at making sure that your veteran services staff are trained separately, because there are some techniques and strategies for veteran customers that are different enough that your veteran DevOps and leavers, really should know that and those specifics at a level that, some of your other frontline staff may not find as fascinating or interesting. And also, again, don't forget about your business services staff and how, this is relevant for them as well.
Good points. Thank you, Joanna. Okay, well, thank you again for participating. Please do stay on the line, answer a couple of questions, and we'll sign off the close out this chat, Brian, as soon as you're ready. And hope to talk to some of you or some of your colleagues in another few minutes on the IWR WIPP chat scheduled later today.